So I am just going to say a couple of words. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to do a couple of technical announcements at the beginning and then hand off to Tamara, who will be your moderator and host this evening. Today, we have this wonderful panel, and we will try to get to some questions. The best way to do that is to hit the Q&A button on the webinar or the chat, which will send chats directly to the panelists or us, the hosts. So again, if you're interested in doing that, I will post in the chat, hey, ask some questions here. And for those of us who are watching on Facebook or YouTube, if you post something there, we will try to catch those questions and pass them along to Tamara. Without further ado, Tamara, you have the floor.
Good evening. My name is Tamara Olexy, and I'm the Executive Director of the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America's National Office. Since January of last year, I've been tasked with coordinating the UCCA Support Ukraine Humanitarian Aid Program that's delivered over $30 million worth of goods. And tonight in this capacity, I have the honor of moderating our humanitarian aid webinar, Supporting Ukraine 1 year later. Next week, on February 24th, we will mark the 1 year anniversary since the brutal conflict began, when Russia unleashed a full-fledged invasion of Ukraine in a war that's been going on for 9 years. As Ukraine continues to stand on the front lines of democracy, the civilized world has begun to understand that the brave Ukrainian men and women are defending not only their own sovereignty, but the entire post-World War II rules-based order. As a result, the United States and our allies have stepped it up. They've greatly assisted, maybe not as quickly as we would have liked or hoped, but they are providing substantial security assistance and humanitarian aid on a government-to-government level. But it's been the diaspora community organizations that have been able to quickly provide an efficient and sustainable response, effectively delivering humanitarian assistance and non-lethal aid. They are the ones that have the capacity, the knowledge, the contacts, the access, not to mention they don't have the language or the cultural barriers, nor are they bogged down by bureaucracy. The Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, as a leading diaspora organization, has been able to deliver tens of millions of dollars in direct aid and in-kind contributions, millions of dollars worth of medical equipment, tens of thousands of IFAKs, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of drones, over 6,000 pieces of protective gear, close to 12,000 generators, and that's just to name a few. But we've been able to accomplish this thanks to the generosity of our community and the public, and having the good fortune of working with some amazing people. 3 of those incredible partners are here with us tonight to talk about their work and contributions to the humanitarian effort to support Ukraine. Our first speaker needs no introduction. She's a celebrity cook, TV personality, businesswoman, author, and we're all keenly aware of her work as the host of the award-winning daytime TV show, The Rachael Ray Show. She's also a philanthropist, but what you might not know is her generosity, understanding, and caring she has for Ukraine. She's traveled to Ukraine several times with our president and deputy, and has been able to deliver hundreds of thousands of dollars of assistance to the country's most vulnerable, its children. She's equipped an entire kitchen, enabling her to conduct cooking classes, teaching vocational students how to cook, and at the same time feeding the orphans with those meals. A true project of sustainability. We are proud that Rachael has partnered with UCCA and thankful for her commitment, support, and work for Ukraine, which I hope she'll share with us a little bit tonight. So Rachael, I was going to say the floor, but the screen is yours.
I feel so grateful to be here and to speak to the community directly. I don't know that many people, we have done one of our daytime shows from Ukraine, an hour-long special, and I thought about that a lot. I don't ever want people to think that, how do I say it, that politics should ever come into how they approach how to make dinner or how they approach our daytime show or something. But it got to a point where I thought we need to share this with the world. And when the shape of our Congress has changed, I'm just so scared that we're going to lose hope in the people that give me hope. that give us hope, that give Madisonian democracy and all of America hope. Whether you're a Democrat or a strict conservative, this is always, I'm 54 years old. This has always been a common fight in my life, that we protect sovereignty, that we protect democracy, that we care for one another, that we are all here to protect the very basic rights of the right to exist and to keep our land sovereign. And that's why I'm there. And it was actually a real mental struggle for me. Do I want to politicize anything I do? I just make dinner, for goodness sake, and show people fun ways to make life a little easier in one way or another. But there are things that happen in your lifetime. You know, in my lifetime, I saw the wall fall. I saw life change for so many people and become brighter for so many people. I am so moved by the Ukrainian people. I don't know how to explain it. It's like a calling. You know, I am certainly, believe me, no nun. I am not a especially touched person in any way, but I have felt so close to the Ukrainian people since this phase. And I want everyone to remember this is 9, almost 10 years of suffering and 1 year of this scourge, of this phase of this war that is absolutely just so much cruelty and destruction. It's beyond words how sad the circumstances. But when I go to Ukraine, when I watch Ukraine fight every day, I don't feel sadness. I feel strength. I don't feel only a loss of heart. I feel proud to know that I went there and I stood with them and I'm with them and I look them in the eye and I hug them and feel them and know them. And I am with the children and the moms and the people that are not refugees. They are displaced, driven out. These are professionals, people of that deserve great respect, that have been driven from their homes irrationally and without cause. And if everyone in this world can't stand for that, I just don't understand that, period. This is a moral imperative to me. And I feel a part of Ukraine as much as I feel a part of my own history. My grandfather was one of 14. The 4 youngest came here. My mother was the firstborn of 10. It was actually 12, but 2 died very young. And I just don't understand people that don't understand the struggle for trying to find ownership of your life. That's all it is. Am I allowed to exist? Am I going to be respected? And do I have sovereignty? I have gone 3 trips. I'm going back shortly for my 4th, and I will go until I'm dead or until the fight is over. And that is my promise to these people. I have never seen such strength. Children, 8, 10, 12 years old, children shame me and shame all of us in the strength they have in this horrible fight for all of us. President Volodymyr and Olena, they are the most amazing human beings, and they've kept their family together through the worst of times, through the most egregious of circumstances, it is so important to them to stay together as a unit, as a family, not just a country, but a family. I have tremendous respect for the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian First Family, and I will be here as long as it takes, and I will do everything it takes. And we always try and bring on every trip I make, we make a laundry list of what everyone needs, and we always try and bring every single thing we can find or allocate or execute in any way possible. The next trip, we're doing ice cream machines, floor cleaners, cataract machines for children that have gotten horrible eye disease. And no one's even really designated how and why this is happening, but we're doing that. At every single trip, we just take our laundry list of what it is we're doing, and we do it, and we get it done. And I will do that as long as I live. This is why we're all here, to defend each other, to love each other, and to appreciate people that are willing to give their absolute lives to protect all of us. I don't know what else to say about it, but that.
Thank you, Rachel. You know, I always find it so grateful, and I'm so impressed by your generosity and your desire to help. I want to thank you for everything you're doing in country, but also here in the United States. You know, by speaking out and by talking about this, you're helping us keep Ukraine on the front pages of the news, and that's what's desperately needed right now.
Everyone needs to have this conversation every day, especially since the Congress has changed over. I think we're protected for a couple of years with what we've already done, but we all need to be mindful, and be mindful with every level, your local government, your state government, and the federal government. You need to remind them that this is something we care about. We are protecting democracy. We are protecting each other. We're protecting the free world, period. And this is essential to us, not to mention the fact you're protecting women and children that are, and thousands and millions of seniors that are displaced. And I can't even get into the war crimes that have gone on. It's just sickening. And we all have to be witnesses to this. If we are not witnesses to this, what happens next? How many more times are we going to cycle through this if we are not witnesses to what's going on, and how many people are being, I don't even want to say the words, but raped, abused, mutilated, dogs running through their homes with their family, a woman who's in her 60s with her dog running around her dead body. I mean, I still have nightmares about it. We can't let this happen. And we never did. And in all of the years of this country, I'm 54. In all of the years I've been alive, this was unacceptable behavior. And yet we keep letting it happen. Yeah. We can't do this anymore. Like, so many fights we're having, we can't let this happen anymore. And I'm so proud that we have a president right now, and so many people around the world that are helping support. But we always need to keep thinking this, guys. Please keep fighting this fight. Please keep upping the game. We need to up our game readily. We are going into new phases on this terrible anniversary, and we need to keep upping the game. We are all at stake here, all of us, and we should be one, not a few or some. We should be one on this.
Yeah, Absolutely. I was going to ask you a question, but I think you've answered it. I was going to ask you, you don't have the Ukrainian heritage. You know, what has brought you? Why is this so important? But you've said it through your heart why you're a part of this and why you're helping Ukraine. But in addition, what can the average citizen do to keep this on the front pages?
Into the eyes of Ukrainian people, you see why you need to be there and what it's about. It is about, there is a fierceness. There is, I will not let you take me or this land or us down. We will stand together. And the together is the part that I'm concerned with. We need to stay together, all of us. And we can, you can, right? Every single level of your legislature. It is so important to start local and go global. You need to make your voice heard. And you need to give anything you can. Host a family, host a child, host someone from Ukraine that has fled and needs some sort of progress in their life. That's what we're trying to do when we go to Ukraine. We're trying to build a program where all of the kids that go to the vocational training school, that is their orphanage, well, because they're orphans, they have parents no more, no family. They go to an orphanage that's also their church and their training center. It's what we used to have in America when I was a child. Me, I had this here. Why can't we help build this there? Vocational training, safety for the orphans, the women and children that need help. Let's gift them that. Let's make sure they have a safety net there. So they have training and a network where they can get jobs around the world. My own Italian teacher, Lorenzo Moralia, he says he will train kids in Italian if they can get placed in Italy after they come out of Ukraine, so they can get jobs there. It's about education. All of us are about how much we are willing to put into the education of ourselves. American children, Ukrainian children, around the globe. How much are we willing to put into talking to each other and educating each other and making each other aware of what's going on in this world and how we can fix it? How can we help each other? These are the tenets of several religions. You know, Ukraine is very Catholic, two different schools of Catholicism, but around the world, this is universal. Do unto others is universal for so many of us, so many millions and billions. Do something for your fellow man. Educate each other. Spend more time with the kids. Make sure our schools are teaching people how to be educated enough to hold a job when they leave public school or some sort of education that was free to them. This is a must. It is an essential. And we must take care of each other. And when our brothers and sisters fall and their children are left alone, we must care for them, period. There is no excuse for not doing that.
Well, thank you, Rachel, and thank you for all the help that you're doing. I really want to thank you that you're a partner with the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America and everything that you've been doing over the last, unfortunately, the last year. Hopefully this
several years, and I will be there for many years more. I hope not.
Yes,
I hope
we all hope not, unfortunately, but we hope we continue our partnership and our friendship, even hopefully when the war is over soon. So thank you again. I'd like to now introduce our next panelist. He's one of those do-gooders who understands and wants to be on the right side of history. As a former U.S. Marine, he co-founded Team Rubicon and then established Team Rubicon Global. And on February 24th of last year, Willie McNulty recognized the need to assist Ukraine and founded a new NGO called Operation White Stork. UCCA has been working as an essential partner in supporting the program of procuring and assembling tens of thousands of life-saving IFAKs. These are these individual first aid kits, which are then distributed by Operation White Stork directly to the front lines and those that need it most. I've had the pleasure of working side by side with this unbelievable team of dedicated individuals. So I'm thrilled that Will can join us today. So Will, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Tamara, and thank you, Rachel and Andre, and my colleague Brady. Brady and I have been in and out of Ukraine since the beginning of the war, and we've seen the ups and downs of we've experienced it alongside our Ukrainian partners. And I remember a particular moment when Brady and I came out of Ukraine, and this was after north of Kyiv, the Russian withdrawal, that land was retaken, but it was right after Russia started really pummeling Ukrainian units with artillery. And it was a moment when we first thought, wow, this is the first time where I think that Ukraine might not be winning this. And then it was with the introduction of HIMARS and taking out the Russian supply lines, ammo depots, command and control, when the momentum shifted back into Ukraine's favor. And it will stay in Ukraine's favor as long as we continue to provide them with the modern weapons and training and how to use it. And the third condition, the weather aligns, so that we can, our Ukrainian partners can go on the counteroffensive. But it has been from the very beginning, ups and downs, but there has been one thing that's constant, and that is the Ukrainian spirit has always been high, and it's high today. I just came out of Kherson I just landed back in the United States a couple of days ago. And even there in Kherson city, which is still within Russian artillery range, morale is high. And but it's up to us and using our individual platforms. Rachel, thanks for using yours to keep Ukraine front and center, because we have seen polls here in the United States, for instance, where it says, 40% of Americans would like to end this war through some means. But I think everyone on this panel and listening understands that the only way to end this war is either for Vladimir Putin to end it himself, or Ukraine to retake every square inch.
To win, to take back the land. Exactly. I so agree with you, Will. That's the only way possible now is for total getting back a sovereign nation. Like it's just, and this has been going on. I saw a piece today. I'm sorry, guys, for breaking in, but I saw a piece today about the transfer of power from Bush to Obama. And they had written in all of their transfer papers, they actually foretold all of this, that Putin was going to go after Ukraine. And they were talking about the real beginning of this conflict, which was 9 and change years ago. And it's so clear this will not end unless there's a win. And the win is going to be on the side of Ukraine, in my opinion. I think they're so strong, and they just will not relent, period. It's not going to happen. So he's going to have to finally be broken, not just by governments or great leaders or NATO. He's going to be broken by the Ukrainian people themselves. And that is incredible. It's incredible to me. And I'm happy I'm alive to see it. And I will go there as long as I'm alive to be a part of it.
Will, would you like to talk a little bit about what Operation White Stork has been doing over the last 12 months?
Sure. So Operation White Stork has been focused initially on two things. One was evacuations. And at the beginning of the war, we evacuated in about 38,000, primarily women and children, of course, from Ukraine into Poland. We started by financing some, young, really ballsy Polish men going into occupied areas and pulling out women and children back into Ukraine, sometimes having to pay off Russian checkpoints to do so. We then graduated that up to a bus program where we were running buses that would take Ukrainians from the Lviv train station into Poland for free. The other thing that we focused on were individual first aid kits. We were surprised that when I crossed over into Ukraine on February 28th of last year and met with military leaders, political leaders, territorial defense forces leaders, I was really surprised that men and women were being sent to the front lines without the basic medical tools that we had in the Marines. And so we decided to focus on providing individual first aid kits. And these are kits to stop traumatic bleeding and restore the airway. They have tourniquets and Israeli bandages, vented chest seals, nasal pharyngeal airways, other types of tools to stop traumatic bleeding. So we've supplied about 24,000 of those kits, and we can continue to do so today. Today, we are distributing generators across the South, primarily in Kherson, and focused on, like I said, those individual first aid kits and field medic backpacks to frontline units.
That's one of the big things that we contribute to are those frontline kits. There's 17 elements. The one I'm most fascinated by is trying to save people's limbs, because we also work with hospitals trying to build out the facilities for prostheses and for housing for people that are trying to learn to use their new legs or arms. But it starts by trying to save their legs and arms. And one of the elements of that kit is a gel that helps bring all of the, am I correct on this? Well, brings all of the blood to the limb so that you have a little bit longer to try and save that piece of your body?
Well, I mean, we're certainly, tourniquets are one of the most important.
But after the tourniquet, there's that gel stuff they put in the kit, yeah?
Brady, do you know exactly what she's talking about with the gel?
I'm not sure.
It creates more circulation to limbs that are damaged, so that a person, or at least that's what I was told when I'm there, to create a little more circulation to that limb to keep it functioning longer, so that you have less of a chance of losing it. Well, regardless,
there are the important point is there are various different types of kits, and so there's not just a single standard. I think what you're talking about,
I got you. Okay.
It's a little bit more advanced for probably a combat medic would have that component that you're talking about.
Well, I just remember how we went from these basic IFAK kits like at the beginning, because we really didn't know what was needed, to now this like that meets the standard of like some of the best militaries in the world of what's in each of these combined kits. And
so you guys are actually learning yourselves. I mean, you're there and you're doing it, and you're always re-educating and kind of growing with the program.
But so is Ukraine, right? So there is now a Ukrainian produced combat gauze. It's produced in Ukraine, so it has a hemostatic agent there. That stops the bleeding. So for everyone who's listening, if you have let's say a bullet hole in a part of your body and you're bleeding out of it, you can stuff that wound with this tri-folded, Z-folded combat gauze, and that has a hemostatic agent, a blood clotting agent in it.
Wow.
So that is now produced in Ukraine. Ukraine is now producing its own tourniquet. One of them is called the Dnipro tourniquet. It's approved by the Ministry of Health. It's about $13 a unit. And when you compare that to a Cat Gen 7, which is going for about $40, American-made tourniquet. So Ukraine is starting to produce its own resources. We're seeing this not just across the medical supplies. We're seeing it, within drones, which is Brett's specialty. But Ukraine is really.
How about I bring Brett into the conversation?
Let's do it. That's what I was trying to.
Yeah,
see
where
that.
are we going?
We're all done with the
next?
conversation. So, as I said, last but not least, my invaluable advisor, to whom I turn to on a regular basis. He's an encyclopedia on drones and their uses. No wonder I've heard him being called the drone warrior. But working with such a specialist like Brett, he's a former U.S. Army intelligence and special operations soldier, an American drone specialist, and an author. UCCA has been lucky to work with him, and we were one of the first, if not the first, organization to purchase these vital eyes to help protect Ukraine and her people. Brett and our partners have delivered hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of drones to help secure Ukraine's transportation routes, supply lines, as well as equip the men and women on the front lines. So thank you, Brett, always for your sage advice. And please join in the conversation and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing to help out Ukraine.
Yeah, thank you, Tamara. Thank you for your continued support. I mean, we've really come a long way, haven't we, since we first met? That's for sure. And, I think everyone out there probably realizes how humble Tamara is. I don't think people truly realize just how impactful her work, her decision-making behind the scenes has been, how integral her efforts are to the defense of Ukraine. I mean, when you talk about IFAKs and just collectively how many have run through UCCA, we had some statistics the other day that I think we've collectively supplied over 1/4 of the entire armed forces of Ukraine's individual first aid kits. And people don't realize that scale. I mean, this is stuff that military should be doing. You know what I mean? Like, why, the government should be funding these things, but they don't. And that's where humanitarian organizations like UCCA steps in. And it's just incredible to see that. And, I see just like Will firsthand when I travel to the front lines, how important this technology is. I physically deliver a lot of this aid along with a number of other partners on the ground. But like Tamara said, UCCA was really the first organization that I know of to recognize the importance of drone technology and how it's going to be one of the key tools on the battlefield to help win this war. And same thing with, Andrei Foutier and Peter Teluk. These guys at the beginning of this really helped with this innovation. I mean, some of the first donations I think we moved in that included drones really have helped kick off this drone technology evolution on the battlefield. Never before, I think, in history could you take a drone that costs $2,000 off the street, something you could buy on Amazon, and destroy a tank that costs over $2 million. I've spent a lot of time at war. Typically, drone technology is reserved for these governments that can afford these millions of dollars of drone technology. And we're seeing just how important this technology is every single day on the front lines. And there's a drone war taking place right now on the front lines. I mean, the likes of which I don't think many people would have imagined. No one expected that Ukraine would be the first real battlefield for a drone war. I mean, we've seen situations where we have Ukrainian drones fighting Russian drones. You go to the front lines and you see drones zooming back and forth over your head. You're in Bakhmut and you have drone technology flying around. You don't know if it's a Russian drone or a Ukrainian drone. And so there's a reason why this invasion of Ukraine has been described as the first full-scale drone war. And when I first came to Ukraine last February, I didn't really think about bringing drones in. I mean, that wasn't the initial reason I went in there. I went in there with some former colleagues within the special operations community to extract Americans. U.S. Embassy packed up and left, and we hopped across the border of Romania and just headed to Kyiv and just started, pulling people out. And that eventually transformed into helping move Ukrainian elderly women and children across the borders. And that's sort of when I got in contact with White Stork and UCCA, and they asked, what else is needed out there? And that's when I said, we have to have drone technology. It's going to change the way this battlefield is being fought. And not just that, but on the humanitarian side as well, right? We have drone technology that we've brought out to Ukraine that's helping in the agricultural space. I don't think people realize how many of these farms right now are completely mined with Russian mines, and farmers are trying to go back there and tend to their agriculture crops and their wheat and corn, and they go there and they find their whole entire land has been mined. So we actually have drones now that can scan those fields and help these farmers come back to their livelihood, which in the end is really the thing that's going to make things come full circle and get better, is when people can return to their jobs and things like that.
How do you feel that that's going? Are you making progress? I mean, this is one of the world's, if not the world's largest grain, like it's a huge grain source for the planet Earth. How do you feel that that's going? Is that useful? Give us some good news about the progress you're making with the use of the drones.
Sure. Well, I think people are slowly coming back, especially if they've been pushing Russians out of various areas. In the end, it's gonna have to do with these ports being opened. But when you travel to places like, and I have traveled before in Mykolaiv, and you meet Vitaly Kim, the governor there. I mean, he tells us the number one thing that's important to him is bringing back the people there to work these jobs, work in these restaurants.
Yeah, you need the humans and a safe place for them to come back to work. And the men have to come back from fighting.
Exactly.
This is one thing that I found interesting.
Can I just ask all of you? Can I just ask you guys, each of you, all of you? Can you give us a forecast of the next several months, in your opinion? And what can we do? The same question I tried to answer. Keep this a conversation. Keep it in front of everyone in your life. Make sure people are talking about it. But what more can people do? And what do you all project? You know more than anyone, obviously. Please give us some guidance as to where you think we're going in the next several months. I'm frightened about them myself. I'm going back, as I said, in March, but I really want to hear what you think the future holds for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I can start. My number one concern, and I'm heading back in a couple of days. I'm actually going to be bringing some more UCCA drones out there into the field. But my concern has always been this sort of Ukraine fatigue that's happening with media, that's happening within just organizations. I think sometimes funding starts to go down at a time they need it the most. I mean, if you've been paying attention to the news, you'll know likely in the next few days there will be a renewed offensive. Now, how large of that is going to be, only time will tell. But if we're looking and we're seeing right now potential troops massing on the Belarus border. You're talking about Putin calling up more conscripts, trying to fully take Bakhmut, and it's just it's scary. I mean, for the first time, I've been in a lot of war zones, and for the first time, I'm sort of creating these sort of internal evacuation plans. What do I do if I'm in Kiev? Right. Where do I go? And so, generally, when I get that feeling, it concerns me, just because I think that Putin, it's all about his pride, and he's going to win this. He's going to try and win this war at any cost. That's the reality, and no matter how many of his own men and women he sends to die. And so when it's somebody's personal pride involved, that scares me going forward. But I think, again, everywhere I go, I try and just promote how important it is to continue to donate, how important the work of UCCA is, and how we just can't forget about Ukraine at any point, because now is the time they need the most.
Will, do you want to comment?
Sure. I think we need to be prepared for it to get harder and tougher before it's going to get better. And by that, I mean, Brady touched on it with these hundreds of thousands of new conscripts that are being called up, especially out east, the human waves that are being thrown at the Ukrainian military. The Ukrainian military is far more technologically advanced, proficient, efficient, better trained, but they are up against literal waves of humans and so the supply lines have to be refreshed very often, and so that's a big challenge. So I think that with this offensive that we're talking about that has really already started, we've seen more ticks out east, and we've seen this city of Bakhmut, which really is not of great strategic importance, other than it gives something for Russia to celebrate if they do take it. And I asked Vitaly Kim, who I met with Brady early on in the war, and I asked him last week when I was in Mykolaiv, and I said, my question was, how many babushkas are going to have to bury, Russian babushkas are going to have to bury their sons before there's political change in Russia? And he said I was asking the wrong question, because the Russian mentality is just to not think about it and just go. They're slaves to a system. They're resigned to their fate, call it what you want, but they are going to continue to come. And his point was actually the best they can hope for is that at a very high level, there is political infighting, Putin gets taken out, or there's some sort of a change at a very high level in Russia, which would cause either someone to have a different, for the Russian army to collapse, or maybe even something like 1991, where Russia itself collapses. It's not a pretty picture either way, but we need to be prepared for things to actually get harder. And that's why the important thing is for us to all double our efforts. Like Brady said, there are organizations out there. The organizations providing drones like UCCA are very important for helping Ukraine win this war, because as Brady said, this is the first full-scale drone war. Both sides are using drones. So that's very important. And the other, I think, important piece is what Rachel said, is you have to contact your local, start local, contact your representatives, including your federal representatives in Congress, and write letters. That's actually very, very important. These things are all added up by congressmen. They tally what their constituents write them about. And we need to maintain support right now for Ukraine. Our partners, they are on the front lines of democracy.
And for the women and children, please, the women and children, they need so much help. They're suffering so desperately. That's where I spend a lot of my time, is in the hospitals and the orphanage. And they've all lost their husbands, their brothers, their fathers. They're all fighting, of course. There's so many people in need in this great country that is working so hard to protect the whole free world, democracy itself. Please, everyone, it's so important. If you can't give money, you can always use your mouth. Give your lips, give some lip service. Keep it on the mouths of Americans. Make your neighbors care. Make people care. It's a desperate, desperate time. It really is, guys. This isn't a movie. This is real life, and it's happening in real time. And we all have a choice to make right now. We can do this, but we need to do it together, all of us. This is a fight that requires unity among all of us. Left, right, center, who cares? This is democracy itself, and these folks, they're suffering, and it's brutally cold, and they need us. They need us, and they need us now.
If I can give a little plug in here for this, talking about contacting your legislature from the local level all the way to the federal level. The Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, its Washington office, the Ukrainian National Information Service, is holding its Ukrainian Days, March 8th and 9th, where members of our community come down. Our office sets up meetings with their members of Congress. So we'd like to invite you all, If you go to our Facebook page and our website, there is information. If you'd like to come, pass it along to your neighbors. We could use all the help that we can get. We work with various different ethnic communities as well. So the more the merrier. As we said, we all have to speak with one voice. But I just have a question. I asked this of Rachel earlier, but I want to ask it of Will and of Brett. I understand the big global picture of all this, but neither one of you have any Ukrainian heritage. What was the draw? Why is Ukraine so important to you? Why are you helping out?
I'll answer that first. So I grew up in Chicago, where I am right now. Chicago has a large Ukrainian population, as Ukrainian village. I went to, so I did have Ukrainian American friends, but I didn't know any Ukrainians. But I had, with my background in disaster response, and knowing this was an unjust invasion, that's why I initially went over to see how my network might be able to help alleviate the human suffering. But really why we decided to stay was the genocide. When we realized what the goal was, when we realized it was, thousands of schools, churches, universities, not to mention the horrible, rape is a policy of war that, became very evident. That's why we decided to stay, redouble our efforts and partner with UCCA to continue to do, the work that we're doing.
Brett?
Yeah, I mean, for me, probably initially going over there was, a bit selfish. I mean, it feels good to me to help people, so I'm kind of, helping my own needs there. I've always found that when I help people, good things come from that. But the longer I stayed, the more I almost felt Ukrainian. I felt like we have a shared heritage, even if not necessarily, because it reminds me of my own neighbors. I talk a lot about in the national security space. I talk about that on the news, and people are so used to these war zones like Somalia and Afghanistan and Iraq, and they're used to these kind of huts and these places that, like, they can't compare themselves to those people. They don't understand why we're there. But when you're in Ukraine, and when I saw the devastation, front and center, I just thought of my own neighbors. I thought of, and I tell people that, I say, look to your left and right. Imagine if everything was just gone. That coffee shop you went to, that grocery store you went to, completely just devastated. I remember some of the first people we evacuated were from Kharkiv, and they never could imagine that just this wonderful, nice life they were living was just completely upended. And to me, that was powerful because, it just felt, it just felt like it was, people in my neighborhood that I'd want to help. And it's been a bit addicting for me, I think, to come back as well. But every time I go over there, I get a renewed experience. And like Rachel said, when you look in their eyes, you see that need, and you want to do everything you can. You want to give them the shirt off your back. And that's always just kind of kept me out there, is just really helping and just getting that feeling from that.
Tamara,
And these guys, they don't just save people, they save parrots and cats and dogs. They save everyone and everything they can get their hands on. And they work so hard, training and helping and educating and pushing forward the force of the Ukrainians to defend themselves. I'm so proud to even know them. And Andriy Fute is the greatest human being. He's kept me alive and given me purpose in my life. I never feel more alive or more of use in the world than when I am in Ukraine. I am very fortunate. I have many jobs, but this is the one that I feel most passionate about. I'm very honored to know all of you, and thank you so much for your support and for allowing me to participate in what you're all doing. I'm always here for you, and you have nothing but all of my respect and love.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, on behalf of the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, I'd like to thank this fabulous lineup of individuals, of people that are dedicated and committed to Ukraine for everything they've been doing over the last 12 years. I really want to keep up our friendship and keep our cooperation up, but I also, on the same time, I really hope that Ukraine wins sooner rather than later.
Yes,
But our paths hopefully will cross some other ways. But I do sincerely thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you're doing to help out Ukraine. Because seriously, if Ukraine falls, so does our way of life.
Our way of life. Yes.
So
I love
I want
you
to
all.
thank everybody for joining
Thank you
us.
for letting us join in your conversation. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks.
I love you very much.
Thank you.
Slava Ukraini.
Slava
Good night,
Ukraini. Thanks, guys. Thanks for everything.
Thanks, Tamara. Thanks, Andre.
Thanks. Bye.
Will and Brad.
Bye, guys. I love you.
And Rachel, thanks for just being true partners. I mean, the partnership is strong. The partnership is giving positive results, and we will continue that with you guys. You guys are fantastic.
I love you guys. I love you all so much.
Thank
All
you,
right, I
Rachel.
gotta go make John's dinner. He's very grumpy.
I'm going to just mention the next couple of things coming up. Tamara mentioned that there will be a event in Washington, D.C. Let's begin with our next webinar. Those of you who signed up today will get an automatic email announcing the webinar on Tuesday, February 21st, with some of our distinguished guests spotlighting on Ukraine. So that registration will be open as of today for that. We will also, as Tamara said, have a Ukrainian Days with already a link available to register for Ukrainian Days in March. All of that is available on the website. If you look there now, you can register for the upcoming events. You can also read all about all of the wonderful projects that Brett talked about, that Will talked about Tamara and Andrei's visits to Ukraine. Hopefully you'll come back for the next one. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Good night.